All right, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you very much for joining us. We will ask if you don't mind to be on mute while we're running through, just so sometimes we'll have interference and it'll be a little easier if everybody's on mute while Alice and I are talking. Alice and I will both stay off of mute because we may, well, she may pipe in during mine and I may pipe in during hers. We wanted to focus mainly on helping you navigate through these lovely comprehensive animal law handbooks. I'm going to start, and then Alice is going to jump in. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Heidi Meinzer. I just rolled off of the Federation board and have left it in incredibly wonderful hands. They're doing great work. And I think you probably all of you know Alice Burton. She's now contracting with the Federation and being our something liaison, something.
Community liaison.
There we go. And we are very happy to present this to you. I'll be talking from the attorney standpoint, and Alice is going to be talking about boots on the ground from the animal control and advocate standpoint. And I'll also have some examples as we talk about a case where we had to get involved as citizens in bringing neglect case and what that looks like. So I'm going to start to just share my screen. I'm going to put up some screens with a lot of words, and I don't want you to worry about copying them or anything. I just wanted to show them to you. Alice is going to go into a little bit more detail about some of the things, but I am going to go ahead and just give you an overview. So let me pop my screen up and get my, all right, and slideshow. Let me start. Can you all see that? I hope so.
Yeah.
All right, you can see my screen. Excellent. All right, so we're just gonna quickly go through some animal law and the basic statutes. You will see this more as Alice talks, but in this book, the Comprehensive Animal Law Handbook, the VCS is Virginia Code section. 3.26500 is where it all starts. Decades ago, actually, we put all of the companion animal laws into one place in the code, and it starts with Virginia Code section 3.26500, and that's where definitions are, and that is the one place probably to start anytime you've got questions. We're going to talk a little bit in particular about the adequate care statute, the cruelty statute, and the seizure statute as well. And those are 6503, 6570, 6569. But as a general overview, I just wanted to talk quickly about the types of animals. Not all animals are created equally in Virginia or elsewhere. We have companion animals that require some adequate care. There are agricultural animals that also, as of fairly recently, in the last 10, 12 years, also now are required to have some adequate care, much less than the companion animal standard. Then you have wildlife and laboratory animals who don't get a whole lot of protection. Basically, the biggest difference in the laws, adequate care, i.e. neglect. We don't call it neglect per se in Virginia Code. If you're looking for where's neglect, you won't see it. You're going to see in 3.26503, you're going to see what adequate care is required. And if you don't provide that adequate care, that is our equivalent of neglect. Adequate care only covers owned animals, so companion animals, agricultural animals. And there's a separate section for agricultural animals that waters down the standards. And then cruelty, which is 3.26570, cruelty may be perpetrated on any animal. There are things written out for hunting. There are things written out for laboratory animals, but any animal can be subjected to cruelty and prosecuted. It's not only owned animals. So that's the biggest difference with the laws between them. Adequate care. What care do you owe an animal? Are you being neglectful? Is 3.26503. And there are 7 basic areas where you need to provide care. Alice is going to go into a lot more detail and give examples of this for you, but it's basically food, water, shelter, space, exercise, care, treatment, transportation, and veterinary care. Again, don't worry about all these words. Alice is going to give you more context for this, but your adequate shelter, we're going to talk primarily about adequate shelter and adequate space. Again, this is that first code section, 3.26500, where you have all the definitions for companion animal, agricultural animal, all that stuff. You also have definitions for the different adequate things, adequate food, adequate shelter, all of that. This is overwhelming in a way, but Alice is going to break it down for us. I just wanted to start to get you understanding where these code sections are and how they interplay. If a person is charged with lack of adequate care and it's for shelter, the judge has to go to this definition and see if anything in this definition has been violated. Adequate space is equally long and chock full of information that Alice is going to break down for us. But again, this is just getting you used to, okay, go to the definition, read this definition. Is there something violated in that? If what happens doesn't violate the words of this definition, the court can't do anything. For cruelty, that is 3.2. This is from 6570A. There are some subsections that talk about what is a felony and some other things that can happen in a cruelty case, but this is the bread and butter of the cruelty statute. And remember that the things we showed you about adequate space, adequate care, those are owned animals. This is any animal. So, and you can see the different subsections: overrides, overdrives, overload. Oops, sorry about that. Whoa, overloads, ill treats or abandons, tortures or willfully inflicts injury or pain, depriving any animal of necessary food, drink, shelter, or emergency vet treatment, sores any equine, ropes, lassos, or obstructs or interferes with the legs of an equine, willfully sets on foot, instigates, engages any way furthers acts of cruelty, carries or causes to be carried by any vehicle in a cruel, or humane manner, or causes any of these above things, being the owner and allowing it, that is a class 1 misdemeanor. There are other times when cruelty is a felony, and it used to be that it would involve the death or euthanasia of the animal. The law changed in the last several years to not require death or euthanasia, which is greatly strengthened the cruelty statute. Again, Alice is going to go a little more detail in this and give you some examples. Then the seizure statute, let me minimize this. The seizure statute is 3.26569. This talks about when can an animal control officer or other law enforcement officer, humane investigator, take an animal. And there are some very specific things that have to happen with seizures. The animal has to be abandoned, cruelly treated, or suffering from a violation in the Comprehensive Animal Care Act to render it in such a way that there is a direct and immediate threat to the animal's life, safety, or health. And once a seizure happens, they've got to run into General District Court within 10 days to have a hearing to find out whether or not the seizure was proper. And again, Alice can talk a little bit more about this and give you some examples. All right, the next statute that I want to show you, and I'm actually going to pull up the code section for you. And Alice is going to talk in detail about this, and I can't agree enough about it. I wanted to just introduce the concept of the fact that you as a citizen can go to the magistrate and swear charges out against somebody. But before you do that, you've got to dot your I's, cross your T's, and work with everybody as professionally as you can before you go to this step. But it is good to know that it can happen. And we're going to talk to you again in a lot of detail about what it looks like to be able to successfully do this, successfully, not just politically, but also legally. But anybody can go before a magistrate to swear out a complaint of possible criminal violations. If you're not law enforcement, you've got to do a written criminal complaint. And you're going to hear us say this over and over again. You must have detail. You must have date, time, very specific. Because if you don't, the magistrate may be very empathetic, but cannot do anything. But I started my legal profession as a public defender here in Alexandria. And part of the deal when somebody is charged is they need to know exactly what they're charged with. What violation in the code, what code section, what basic behavior is supposed to have violated that code section, and the date and time that it happened. Because you can't just walk into an animal control officer or walk into a magistrate and say, this guy is always doing this, or this woman is always doing this. It's not going to help. It's got to be on July 27th, 2022 at such and such a time. This individual who lives at this address did this, and here's proof of photographs with date stamps, such, et cetera, et cetera. So you really have got to have your details. Alice is going to talk, like I said, a lot more about that. And you are required under this code section to do an actual written criminal complaint as well. So everything that you can have ready to go for that magistrate is super helpful. And do know under that code section, if it's a felony, you may actually have to go through the Commonwealth Attorney's Office and or law enforcement to help you out with this. There are a lot of other pieces of that code section, but do know that it is available to you. So that is we'll hold off on the questions. Let me stop sharing at this point. That was my quick and dirty overview of some of the law. We're going to have Alice pop on, and if you're not on mute, again, if you could put yourself on mute, that'd be super helpful. I'm going to turn this over to Alice. She's going to go over in a lot more detail some of this and give you some examples, and I may pipe in as she's presenting to talk a little bit about legally from an attorney standpoint some important things.
Hey, everyone. Let's see if I can figure out the technology here.
Put a slideshow along
There we go.
down, yep, down and over a little bit.
There we go. How's that? All right.
Yep, perfect.
So, you know, a lot of you guys know me, and I am honored to know a lot of you. But if you don't know my history, I was a animal control officer in Arlington, Virginia for 15 years, close to 15 years. And 13 of those years, I was chief of animal control. And so we saw a very good transformation of the county because we did a lot of educating. We like to educate, and then if that didn't work, then it was enforcement. But we like to make these connections with folks. And then so I'm trying to I use that background. I've used that to help folks who are seeing animals not being taken care of and also to sort of be a liaison between community members and animal control officers. So we're going to cover quite a bit, but I tried not to make it too long because we want to do questions and answers. So we will get started. So this is how we think all animals should be treated. I can't figure out how to get rid of my, there we go. You know, I mean, I think all animals want to be treated this way also. And when I think we also need to take a look at ourselves as animal welfare folks. You know, a lot of times we're working long hours. Well, I'd say 99% of the time we're working long hours. And, you know, sometimes our animals suffer a bit. So I think that it's good to emphasize, you know, take a look at folks, put yourself in their shoes. So, but this is what we're going to do today. So let's get back to reality. And I want, so our animal law book of Virginia, when I was an ACO and even now, that was basically the Holy Grail. I was in that book multiple times a day. I had one in my side pocket of my BDU pants. I had one in the truck, one in the office, usually a couple at home, and they were just everywhere. And then I had the link on my phone. So we're going to pull this up and I'm going to show you, because even experienced animal control officers have a hard time finding certain codes. And you know it's there, but you need to clarify something, or you need to show someone that code. So we're going to go through this really quickly, because that book, it can be very intimidating. So these are the chapters. These are the sections, rather, in the Comprehensive Animal Companion Handbook. And what you want to do, so these are the chapters, and you just go through here. And if you don't have a book, I would suggest ordering one through the Federation. We make copies, we print them up every year, and they really are amazing to have. So you're going to go through here, your definitions, regulations. You can look through here, care of companion animals by owner, agricultural animals. You're looking at, you know, commercial dog breeding. It's a whole gamut of different topics. It even tells you about, you know, rabies tags, you know, how old a dog has to be, a puppy or kitten, talks about dangerous dogs, the fees. So what I normally do is let's see. So say I've got a dog that I think is being mistreated, or maybe not like physically being beaten, but they're not getting all of the essentials that they should be getting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at what's going on with that dog. Trying to pull the PowerPoint back up here. So so you guys see this picture here, right? So we'll look at adequate shelter. Now there's a fine line between shelter and adequate shelter. And whenever you're talking about shelter for a dog, I always want you to use the term adequate shelter, because that goes back to what our animal law book says. And so the definition of adequate shelter. So you're going to look in the definitions. And I hope I'm not confusing you already, because I sound confusing to myself. But you're going to go through the definitions. So you can see here, you've got adequate shelter right here, okay? And it tells you it has to be clean and dry. It has to protect the animal from the elements, which if it's raining, it has to protect them from that rain. It has to protect them from any winds, snow, temperatures, and it has to be maintained and clean. And if needed, they have to have shade outside so that they can also, if they're outside, they can eat while they're in the shade. They can lay in the shade because they don't want to stay in there all day long. And these are things that an animal control officer can enforce. But if you go back in the definitions, you look at abandonment. So it has what Virginia considers abandoned, okay? Means to desert, forsake, or absolutely give up an animal without having secured another owner or custodian for that animal. Now, I will tell you what else this means is this doesn't have to be your animal when it comes to abandoned. So you say somebody's out there trapping feral cats. Hello?
The slides are not working.
What do you see right now?
Oh,
I see-
it's your PowerPoint. I think when you shared your screen, you might have only shared the PowerPoint and not your actual screen, maybe.
Yeah, we're
I'm
only
sorry,
seeing the
hold
picture
on.
with the dog, the
How-
first one with chapter 65.
I got you. I wish I know. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, we were trying to tell you in the chat, but
Oh,
and I
okay.
thought I unmuted, but I don't think it worked. Sorry, Alice. We were
No,
trying to tell you.
no. That's fine. That's my fault. That's okay.
And I saw in the chat while you're doing that, Alice, you can keep doing that. In the chat, some people were asking about the book. It's the same book that I held up, this pink book here, and I'm gonna put, there we go. This is the handbook. You can also get this online, which is what Alice is pulling up right now. And I'm gonna get the link for where you can get the book.
Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. I turned I have people texting me, but I have my phone off, so I couldn't hear. See, that's what happens when you try to be polite. So we're talking about abandon right now. So what I was saying was, it's not just someone who abandons their own animal, but it's also, you have someone who is out there trapping community cats that are coming into their yard, and they're taking those community cats, and then they're just taking them off somewhere and dumping them. That is considered abandonment. And I actually did just confirm that probably 3 or 4 weeks ago with Michelle Welch from the state's attorney's office. But if you go down here, you have adequate feed, adequate shelter, adequate space. It's all about what is adequate for those animals. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. I think I have to stop sharing every time and then go back to the PowerPoint. I apologize.
If you select it should give you an option to do a desktop, like you can share desktop, and that will allow it to follow you from a different app to a different app, if that helps.
Yeah, I don't have any idea how to do that, but thank you, Stephanie. All right, so what we wanted to do was we wanted to answer some questions that we've heard throughout the years that always seem to come up. Okay, we've had people who call us and say, listen, I found a dog, I called the shelter to report it, and they told me I have to bring that dog to that shelter. So what are your responsibilities if you have a stray animal, or one of your supporters calls, one of your citizens calls, and you have a stray companion animal? You have to contact the jurisdiction where you found that animal within 48 hours. You have 48 hours to do that, and it's extremely important. You want to look at this animal to see if it has identification. Now, let's not forget, it's not just a collar and tag, but as you all know, it could be a microchip and it could be a tattoo. Is the animal injured or is it sick? It needs to have if you're going to hold that animal, you then need to make sure that that animal is being taken care of? And how did you find the animal? Was this animal, was it dumped somewhere? Did you see them dumping it out of a car, or was it just walking around? So here is code for this. It's 3.2-6551. And again, those of us in animal welfare need to know these codes that come up quite often and be able to show folks what this code is. A lot of times I will make copies of certain codes and keep those. When I was at ACO, I would keep those handy so that I could just hand those out to people. And so the stray periods, let's go over the stray periods really quickly. So a stray period for a companion animal with no identification is 5 days. The stray period for a companion animal with identification is 10 days. And so a lot of times the question comes up, I found an animal, how long do I have to keep it in order for it to become mine? Well, there's no really good answer to that. But I would suggest that folks use that 5 and 10 day stray period that the animal shelters are using now.
Yeah, and if I'd pipe it in there for legally, as an attorney, what do I think that looks like? I've had the same question a gazillion times. And this is the hard call about where that animal goes. The animal could go to the shelter. And if the animal goes to the shelter during that time frame, then it's easy, right? Alice just said 5 days if you know who the owner is, if you can tell, and 10 days if you can't. And or I'm sorry, if I flip that, 5 days if you cannot tell who the owner is, 10 days if you can. When you're the finder, it doesn't say anything in the law about that. And so arguably, if I'm a judge and I'm trying to figure this out, if you did everything you're supposed to do and you notified the shelter, I'd probably grant you those timeframes to see, okay, can I now say you're the owner or not? I certainly would not go any lower than that for days. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do and notify the shelter, you're at a serious risk of ever being able to, claim to be the rightful owner within a certain amount of time. So do take this very, very seriously. Just my 2 cents as an attorney.
Yes, and and keep in mind that if you are going to hold that animal, or one of your supporters or constituents is going to hold that animal, that they need to make sure that they know that they are now responsible for that dog, that cat. If it gets out and gets hurt, or it gets out and gets bit, or bites somebody, they're responsible. They have to make sure that they are giving them all of the minimum requirements. And then again, make sure you're turning that, calling the shelter and turning that in within 48 hours. So this is another question that we get a lot. How old do puppies and kittens have to be before someone can sell them or give them away? So it is in Virginia, and Heidi and I actually went over this before because this can be a little confusing. So we did go over it before just to make sure we were on the same page before the presentation, but it is 7 weeks of age. They cannot be given away or sold if they are unweaned, unless the nursing mother stays with that kitten or puppy, or they have another nursing mother who has accepted that puppy or kitten. So hopefully that makes sense, but we're going to take questions when we finish here. So you're concerned about an animal and, you know, this is going back to the neglect. And what do you do? Okay, so this is, as you can see here, hopefully I can make it a little bit bigger. Again, this is the care of companion animals, adequate feed, adequate water, adequate shelter. Okay, and again, you need to look at definitions, make sure that you understand those definitions. And I would, in the next couple of days, you know, we can always provide links, but it's pretty easy to find this, and make yourself familiar with these codes. And it really is very simple. If I can figure it out and navigate it on a daily basis, I know you can. You will have no problem at all. Trust me. So become familiar. So there's a dog out there. Again, you have some concerns, and maybe once you look at the code section, you realize, oh, well, actually they are giving that dog everything that it needs, or maybe not. But the main thing is that you want to document. You cannot document enough. Take pictures and make sure that you have timestamp on it. You know, the smartphones, when you take a picture and then you go back into that picture and you hit information. I know for mine, I've got an Android and I always hear iPhones are better, so maybe y'all's are even better. But when you hit information, that picture slides up a little bit and the bottom half becomes your timestamp. It tells you the location it was taken. It doesn't get too specific on location, but it'll give you a pretty general location. And it's great to do a screenshot then of both of those side by side or up and down. So running parallel or vertical, I'm sorry. Vertical, horizontal, vertical. So, but you want to make sure that you're documenting everything. Okay, and talk to others in the neighborhood to see if they know what the situation is. Don't go knocking on the doors, but if you see somebody, just maybe bring up a conversation. Write everything that you see. Write it down as soon as you see it, or drive away and write it down right away. As detailed as possible and as soon as you can, because you're going to forget things. You are absolutely going to forget things. But again, document.
And if I could pipe up on that too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Document, if you're working with others on a certain situation, document who sees what when.
Mhm.
In a court, how to say this? So in a two things are coming to mind. First of all, you've got to prove what's called chain of custody. You have got to show this dog, and let's say the dog, there was a question about whether, you know, does the dog have to go to the shelter or not if I'm a finder, etc. This dog, if they leave the property, Joe Blow took the dog and put that same dog in Joe Blow's house, and then, you know, then the dog went to the shelter. You have to be able to show, just like a gun or drugs or whatever in a criminal case, exactly where that dog has been and in whose hands. And same thing of, you know, Jane Doe saw the dog on such and such a date. If the photograph is an accurate depiction, anybody can say, yes, that's an accurate depiction and the photograph may come in, but the charge could still fail because you don't have the eyewitness who saw the time that the violation happened. So it doesn't matter if, oh yeah, that looks like it's looked 100 other times. If the charge is on July 17th, 2023, you're charged with lack of adequate space or lack of adequate exercise or whatever it is, that eyewitness has to be in court.
Yeah.
So that exact person. So if you're, you know, it's really important to document in any event, but it's incredibly important to document who is seeing things when you're working with a group.
And I want to go back really quickly to when I was talking about if you find a companion animal and about reporting it and whatnot. If that animal looks like it's been neglected or abused, you need to contact animal control right away. And if they don't seem like they're interested, you call the police or you call the sheriff's department, or both, because they need to start an investigation right away. They need to be notified. And if you call me and you say, I called the police department, and they said that there was nothing they could do, guess what? I'm going to ask you, who exactly did you talk to? Document everybody you talk to, dispatch everything. And even if they agree, yeah, we're going to send somebody, find out who's sending them.
That's
Get
right.
everything in writing. And
Date, time, place, name, badge
Yes.
number, the whole spiel. Yeah.
don't wait 2 or 3 days to contact them.
Exactly. The defense will become, you know, if I'm an attorney representing somebody charged with cruelty, I'm going to say, well, I don't know, in that 3-day period, the person who called the dog in might have done it, right? And that may be reasonable doubt, and you're going to lose that case. So 100%.
Yeah, so, and you want to make sure that they're seeing that dog or cat as you're seeing it. All right, so again, reach out to animal control about these cases. It's usually dogs that are chained up or dogs that don't have appropriate shelter. So when you reach out to animal control, you know, be polite to the ACO. And first off, thank them, say, I hope you're having a good day, because they, no matter who they are, they're out there working, and you have to treat them with respect, just like you would anybody else. And then you want to be specific about the address. You know, I have folks that I talk to now that I get a lot of calls, like monthly, from folks who live out in rural areas. They need help with a dog that they can't get. They just can't get any response from ACOs or whatnot, or they just don't know what to do. And I'll say, what is the address? And they'll say, oh, well, it's like the third house, you're going to go down this dirt road, and I think there are 2 cows that live there. And that's not good enough. You have to be specific. And then I'm also going to ask them, tell me what you've seen so far. Send me some pictures.
Pretty worthless.
Can
I'm not gonna stick with it till 7 o'clock.
Can everybody mute their computers, please? So be specific, give them copies of the pictures. Okay, give them your narrative and talk them through that narrative and make sure they have no questions. Talk to them, and then give them copies of the law or laws that are being broken. Go through that law book and wrap it up like a gift for them. It's the best way to do it. And again, document, 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 and make sure that you're able to go up on the stand or go before the magistrate and testify to this. You don't want to exaggerate at all. Okay. If you get nowhere with animal control, it may happen. I have had to go to the powers to be. You know, who do they answer to? Find out who that is. And with hey, Diana, I don't know if you have the capability to mute people, but if you could, I just want to make sure everybody can hear. nobody likes to be embarrassed, especially elected officials and bigwigs within counties or cities. So you want to make sure that you're letting them know what's happening. And you're paying the taxes for this service. Don't ever say, though, I'm paying your salary. Please don't say that. Please don't say that. Always stay professional and don't give up. There's nothing worse than me hearing somebody say, I called animal control for 6 months straight. They never did anything. I just gave up. Call me, reach out to me, and I can be a liaison for you with the county, with the city, whoever I need to be. And so we talk about the next thing we're going to talk about is the tethering law. So a lot of people say, I've looked up the tethering law, I've looked for the tethering law, I can't find it. It's not an actual code just for tethering. So if you look in the definitions, we're going to go back to the definitions, and that's why it's so important that you get to know this law book. It's going to come in so handy. So if you look in adequate shelter, they've added that to adequate shelter. So if you go down to, I think it is line 12 or 15, when it talks about outdoor tethering of an animal shall not constitute the provision of adequate shelter unless the animal is safe from predators and well suited and well equipped to tolerate its environment. And then it goes on to say, if there's a hurricane warning or tropical storm warning, the dogs should be brought inside or not tethered. When it's 85 degrees or higher, or 32 degrees or lower. And when there's severe weather issued by the National Weather Service, including winter storm, tornado, severe thunderstorm warning. Now, this is the little.
Alice, do you want to,
Yes.
they're looking at your PowerPoint right now. If you want to pop up the.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, hold on. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, hold on, let me go back. Thanks, Heidi. All right, here we go. So again, I'm back at adequate shelter. So you guys heard what I was saying, that what they've done is they've amended the previous code, the definition of adequate shelter, and then put this in here to deal with the tethering issues. Okay, and so all the things that I listed out, but there is a clause in here that unless an animal control officer, having inspected an animal's individual circumstances, has determined the animal to be safe from predators and well suited and well equipped to tolerate its environment. Now, don't ever let an ACO should never say, oh, well, in this weather, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Without going out there. They need to go out there and look at it. They need to inspect it. And it could be, even if they're off on the weekends, it's okay to ask a sheriff's deputy to go out there. Somebody has to go out there and tend to these animals. Okay. Let's see, let me go back and do this the right way. Okay. So this is sort of the closing, but I do want to go over one thing that I didn't put in here. And it's actually really important, especially this time of year, are the way we always handle dogs in cars. So you're going to get, I guarantee that animal control officers are getting multiple per day calls, dogs in cars. So Arlington, we used to get a ton of them. So we would first go check out the dog. Just because the dog's in the car doesn't mean we're just going to bust open the window and pull it out or have the police open it. and pull it out. We have to look at what's going on with the dog. What condition is the dog in? So there are two levels. There's animal neglect and then animal cruelty when you're dealing with dogs in cars. So if you've got a dog in the car, it has started panting, it's in distress, you can see that that dog needs to come out now. I have seen dogs in cars like in severe temperatures, and that it literally they're acting like they're a cat and it doesn't bother them, and they're just kind of soaking up the hot air, and I've never figured that out. But it's a judgment call, and we normally would remove that dog and cool the dog off, and that person will then get a ticket for minimum requirements, for not providing minimum requirements. Now, we have had dogs where we had to rush it to the vet because of heat exhaustion. The vet has had to hydrate, cool it down, get this dog to come back around. At that point, then it's animal cruelty. So I hope you can you understand that there are certain levels when it comes to dogs in cars, and it's always it can sometimes be confusing to the folks that are calling. I'll give you an example. It was 50 degrees out, 48, 50 degrees out, and the fire department called, and there was a dog in a car. They thought it was illegal for a dog to even be in a car by itself, and they were getting ready to rip open a convertible top right in front of the courthouse. I'm like, I would hold up on that, just hold up. And I got there, and the dog, was just bouncing around, wagging its tail. And again, it was 48 degrees. So the dog was fine. So again, just to recap, know what the laws are, make copies, keep them handy, make it a favorite in your web browser. I have all of these earmarked. Hand it out to your community members. Let them know what the laws are, and let them know what to look for. And again, document. I can't even say that enough. And work with your animal control officer. We have one locality in Virginia where the animal control officer was very slow to act on anything. And then all of a sudden he was pushed into doing a cruelty charge. And the next thing you know, this ACO was put on this pedestal because of doing that fantastic job of prosecuting the person, getting prison time. And now when you talk to that officer, I talked to him last week, and he was like, you know what? I went out to this other house. They didn't have adequate shelter. And, I gave them 24 hours to get it fixed. And it's just a different person when you're talking to them then. So again, work with animal control instead of against them. So I hope that helped everyone. It's a lot to put in. I'll be honest with you, it's a lot to put in a slideshow in 30 minutes. I love talking about this stuff, and I could go on for hours. Obviously, I need to work on my screen sharing abilities, but hopefully that was okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I definitely do.
Was that Sherry?
Yes.
Go ahead.
One of the questions with the tethering law, we're dealing with it. We've been going back and forth with animal control pretty much nonstop. Two specific dogs. It's been years that it's been going on. The one thing is safe from predators. How is a tethered dog ever safe from predators? is the one thing. And then the other part is where so much is left at the discretion of the animal control. As far as to what point can you override the animal control, I guess would be, you know, when they're going out and they're not addressing the issue, they're not following through with it. I mean, the people we got them to get them new dog houses. They put the hay and stuff in it the one day and had the covers, the windbreaks. Then the windbreaks were gone. Nothing was in the houses anymore. We called again. Nothing's being followed through.
Well, you know, again, it doesn't always stop at animal control. You know, find out who they are, who their appointed supervisor is.
We've done that.
Is it, and who was that? Did you reach out to them?
Yeah, for the county, it was the county administrator, and then for the town, it was the chief of police.
And nothing was done?
They get on top of them and they go out like the next day or so,
Mm-hmm.
address it, and then it's the same thing. We're calling, we're not getting calls back. It's not being followed through. You know, we're basically doing their jobs, like to the point I got in a confrontation with somebody because they figured out that I'm the one coming by getting the documentation about their dogs. And it's like a no-win situation pretty much.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
I think this is very similar to a case actually that started my dipping my toe into animal law, where some Northern Virginia rescues were pulling dogs from a jurisdiction, a woman in Goochland County, and we basically, nobody was helping. They were talking to everybody just like you just did. And what they did was they each started documenting, and they went to the magistrate, and like I talked about, and they got their own summonses at that point. And we were lucky because the state vet, a representative from the state vet, was actually on this property and testified to the length of the chain and some of the other violations to give some credibility. And at that point, and the animal control officer actually testified for the defendant in that case and was directly contradicted by the state vet representative to say, no, I saw the same chain and it was definitely too short. Here it is in the code. I was looking at the time, it was 3 times the length of the dog, and it was really 1.5 times, definitely too short, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, at that point, at some point, it just may get to where, you know, you've got to go to the magistrate yourself to take care of the situation.
Okay, which I didn't realize that was an option until you guys just said that.
Yep,
So-
it is. And that's what Alice is saying. Like, don't
Yeah.
go nuclear right away, right? Try and give them the chance to do the right thing. Keep everything documented about what you see on the property, who you
No,
talk
we
to,
have
to get it
pictures,
fixed,
videos,
all that. Great.
temperatures, everything.
Yeah.
Hey, Sherry, I'm gonna put, everyone, I'm gonna put my email up here.
Okay.
And then, if you folks have like specific, like you have, Sherry, I would love to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it doesn't sound like I would say this to you, but there may be cases where you say, can you look at this? And I'm gonna say, you know what, everything looks okay.
Mhm.
You know, depending on the temperature. That's the temperature, obviously plays such a dramatic role
Mhm.
in all of these cases. So let me put this up here now, and then go ahead and reach out to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm involved with her in that case too. So like we even wait because the dogs are in shaded areas. So we even wait till the temperatures get up to 90 degrees
Mm-hmm.
because that to me is fair, right? The dog's in shade, but also the humidity takes a role in this as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's been a nightmare.
And you know, there are so many things, and then all of a sudden, Do you just have days, like you're talking about humidity, temperature, precipitation, storms, and then you have like just this literally a perfect storm where that animal should not be out there and it needs to be removed right away. So any other questions?
Yeah, I'll have another one. So there is a county close to me that is famous for telling people to stop feeding stray dogs. If you feed a stray dog, it now belongs to you. And if we pick the dog up, you're going to have to pay $100 for owner surrender. And they basically tell people that their shelter is full, that they cannot pick up the stray dogs.
Mhm.
And even tell people to put the dog, if they pick them up, they tell them to put them back where they found them.
Yep.
So we have this big influx of stray dogs in this county because animal control will not pick them up.
So as far as, yeah, I've heard ACOs, where they're saying to folks, and it goes with community cats too, well, you feed them for more than, like 72 hours, they're yours. When anybody is telling you something like that, it's okay to say, can you tell me where that code is?
Yeah.
Because I'd really love to know more about it, because there is no such code that says that. If I go out and feed the birds 4 days in a row, do I now, own those birds? So, it's they like to do that a lot of times, but ask for the code number, the code section, and that you have a right to know that. And it's not true. It absolutely is not true. Now, and I will tell you right now, shelters are in a very bad position. They are full. And if they start bringing in more animals, they're going to get to the point where they're going to have to euthanize for space.
Right.
So it's really, they're in that position where if they start euthanizing for space, they're horrible people. And it goes against, everything that everybody's working for. But then if they're not picking up strays, then those strays are in danger. And then, the community, may be in danger. So it really is a bad situation for them altogether. But I think what can happen is try to somehow work with your shelter and be a resource for them, and even try to develop some type of some type of foster program. Get the dogs that are adoptable and the cats that are adoptable into foster programs, and they empty up space for those dogs, and so that they aren't running around and either being in danger and not being able to find their way back home, or so they don't get hurt. And the shelter should be the last resort. And so, like I say, I would work with the shelter and see how you can, get a foster program going. And they may laugh at you and say, we don't have time, but that's where the community gets involved. This is a community problem, and everybody has to be involved. And if you go at it in a way where you're helping them, instead of saying, listen, you have to start taking dogs, and it may mean going to your city council meeting or your county meeting, your board of supervisors meetings. Do you guys go to those meetings regularly? No.
It does more.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great. Listen, I'm the biggest nerd. If I have to go to one, like say I'm representing, doing a presentation or, speaking at one, I'm the biggest nerd because I will sit there and listen to every word. I
Mhm.
love those meetings because, and sometimes you get some excitement there.
Mhm.
So, especially the rural meetings, they get pretty fired up. But it really is important to go there and show your face, let your face become familiar to those folks, but in a good way. You don't want them to, hide under the desk when you walk in there. You want them to know that you're going to be working with them.
And usually you have public comment time where you can speak for
Mhm.
2 or 3 minutes on any topic you want. So you can go there and, just introduce yourself and let them know what part of the county you live in and that you are concerned about X, Y, and Z, and you hope they take it, seriously, and maybe they need more resources or something, and sometimes it's a matter of funding. And the Board of Supervisors doesn't know, right, that, oh, maybe we should allocate more funding to our shelter. So,
Mhm. Any other questions?
I have one that is kind of specific, so if you can answer it, I can email it later, but I work with another nonprofit that helps people who have become homeless unexpectedly, and they are trying to kind of form a foster program for their pets. And I just wanted to know kind of the legality involved with temporary fostering and where the ownership lies and things like that when it's a temporary situation like that.
So is that, I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify,
Yeah,
Heidi.
yeah.
So it's folks who are now finding themselves without a home and they have pets. And so now they're looking for a foster family to take in their pet.
Yes, so
Okay.
The nonprofit is primarily focused on helping the people, but they try to find them housing. Unfortunately, most of the housing isn't pet friendly. So they're also
Mhm.
trying to work with the families to get foster or temporary placements for their pets, if they can hopefully then get the pets back once they get homes.
right. So I've seen this done a couple different ways, and a lot of times it depends on how long you think that time frame might be. If it's a shorter time frame, possibly. I've seen some shelters do something where you sign a document where the owner remains the owner and is just temporarily housed at the shelter until they can get their feet, get themselves back on their feet and get the animal back. If it's not clear how long that time period might be, then and the animal surrendered to a rescue, then technically the rescue is going to be the owner. And you just need some, you can have a different type of agreement that says we anticipate that this family may be able to reclaim the animal, and so we'll foster, we'll keep the animal, but we won't offer the animal up for adoption until a certain amount of time. You can even say who the owner is going to be in that document. You just have to make it very, very clear, because you want to know, you want to clarify who is the owner, and whether or not that animal is going to be offered up for adoption and when. So you don't want you just have to be fair to all parties, right? Because if it takes 6 months or a year, at some point, that rescue might not be able to continue to do that, or the foster falls in love and starts to think it's mine. And you need a foster agreement that says very explicitly, you are fostering, you are not the owner, nothing in this creates ownership, because it happens. People, I get phone calls a lot about that and emails a lot about fosters who don't want to give up the animals. And you really want a very clear foster agreement that makes it abundantly clear that that animal belongs to the rescue or the shelter. There's no ownership with a foster. So it's a matter of contracts. It's a matter of making your contracts very clear in those situations, but it can absolutely be done.
Yeah. So I wanted to go to some of the questions really quickly, if you guys don't mind, that were in the chat, just in case you haven't seen them. Bob, you were asking questions as far as, if you're doing like, I think this like, if you're doing an adoption and you have somebody, how do you know that that person, either the adopter or maybe a volunteer, to see if they have any past run-ins, any convictions or whatnot? You go under the Virginia criminal court system, and what you can do is put their names in and search. I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can do it by Virginia still. For the whole state, you just, what I would suggest is start with that locality and work your way out. That is, I worked at the shelter. I was animal control.
Alice,
Yes.
actually, you can search the entire state now. They have
You
changed
can,
it.
okay, great. That's perfect.
Yeah, they
That
did.
same-
They just made,
Yeah.
in the last couple of years, they just made that change. It's way better.
That'll save you about 12 hours worth of work there. But like as an animal control officer, even chief of animal control in Arlington, that was how I checked. I didn't have any access to any legal records with the Arlington police or not. So then another question is, our local shelter won't take kittens under 8 weeks old. Where'd it go?
I just popped a
Oh, okay. And
response.
so, oh, there you go. And about open admissions and whatnot. Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. You don't want kittens under 8 weeks old going into the shelter. Who was that asked? Was it Beth or somebody? But anyways, you don't want them going into the shelter. They're going to get sick. These are they're unvaccinated kittens more than likely. And the chances of them staying healthy are not good. And again, that's where, you start like a foster program. Even if they're unweaned, the Federation can get you literature on bottle baby fostering, the national, Marnie Russ up in Arlington, her and Vanessa run the Kitten College. They've got tons of information, but again, we want to keep puppies and kittens out of shelters, and we want to keep them healthy, and then you have programs like Wait Until 8. So when they are old enough to be adopted and spayed and neutered, they can be spayed and neutered at 8 weeks, as long as they're 2 pounds. You want to get them spayed and neutered, and then you can get them into the adoption system. But why not put them up for adoption while they're at the fosters instead of taking them into the shelter? You don't want to fill the shelter up with these guys. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any other questions.
I didn't catch your email when you put it up. Can you do that? Can you say that again? I know it's A Burton.
Yeah, it's A Burton at vfhs.org.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
We were so excited to see the level of interest. We really appreciate it.
Alice, can I ask you one more question? This is Melissa. How are you?
Hey, Melissa. It's so funny when somebody asks a question, it's like that the old game of like trying to get the card on the card real quick, because I'm like, where'd that voice come from? Go ahead, Melissa.
I was just curious. This common theme seems to be not getting the local help or the laws enforced locally.
Mhm.
Is there anything you could do at the state vet level that an individual can do, or does that always have to come from animal control? Can you go outside your county and find resources at the state level with all your documentation, of course, not just shooting from the hip and everything, and
in
try to
order
get
to
help there?
In other words, like for example, like a dog that's being neglected and the animal control is not doing anything.
Mhm.
So it would not be the state vet, but yeah, they wouldn't enforce that. However, we can get Michelle Welch involved, and she can call the Commonwealth attorney in that area and the animal control officer and that animal control officer supervisor and say, listen, somebody needs to get their rear end out there now and take care of the situation, because this is animal cruelty or it's animal neglect. And I just sugarcoated what Michelle would say to people. So trust me, there's nothing that upsets her more than anybody not doing their job and dropping their responsibility. So yeah, she has done that for me before. As a matter of fact, when I was telling you earlier that if somebody traps community cats and then takes them down the road and lets them out somewhere where they think they're going to live this beautiful life and, you know, the farmer's cornfield, that's abandonment. And she, like I said, she confirmed that for me. And I was able to go back to that locality and say to that Commonwealth attorney, Michelle Welch confirmed this is abandonment, because it did become an argument between the CA and myself.
I have
Okay,
a
and then I have one
question.
more question about that. How do you prove that? Because we've been told like you need a picture or a video or a license plate. Like that to me is very difficult to prove. I mean, not
To
as,
prove that it was abandoned,
yeah,
or
I mean,
are
at
we talking
least the
about-
dogs on a chain, or
yeah,
you could take a picture from the road, or you could document like all the stuff you said, but how do you prove? Because we get a lot of strays in our county and I'm always working to try to find their homes and it's very rare, maybe 1-2% I
Yeah,
do.
it's as, I mean, abandonment is hard if there isn't a video or something of, I mean, it's why
Okay.
it doesn't get prosecuted nearly as much as when it happens, because you can't use hearsay, you can't use speculation. You just need to know you might not be able to build a criminal case. You know, it's tough. It's hard.
oh, okay.
I have a question.
You already answered that. Okay. Yeah, who was that?
This is Jane.
Jane. Yeah.
Yes, we have a situation in our jurisdiction where some of the ACOs are actually picking up community cats that have been spayed, neutered, and they're in colonies. And this past winter, we had to do a little fundraising to actually get one of the community cats released back to the location where one of the large rescues, Cat's Cradle, had spayed, neutered dozens of these cats. And I don't understand why somebody would do that, why the ACOs would be interested in doing that, and what we can do about it. And then the other thing I saw in the comments section, our shelter says they're open and have to accept any animal that comes in, cats, dogs, lizards, snakes. And then I saw, I think, a comment that that's not necessarily the case.
So if I can, so the Virginia state law only requires shelters to take in dogs running at large. That's it. However, you know, I live in Alexandria. In Alexandria, we have a lot of resources, and our city shelter will take much more than that. Their policy of, you know, they're gonna take owner surrenders and this and that. And so it depends. There's what the state law requires, and then there's what the shelter has contracted to do for services and what their policy is. They can have their own intake policy, and their intake policy may be open admission. It may be some type of managed intake. It may be some combinations of those things. It just depends. It's just a matter of what I was answering was what the state law actually requires them to do. They can do more if they want. Oh, Alice, did you free? Oh, no, you're there. Okay.
Yep, I'm here. No, I think you answered that very well. And remember that if people are, I'm sorry, if shelters are changing their policies as far as what they're taking in, what they're accepting, if they're becoming a little bit more strict about it, it is to keep that population down in that shelter, to keep it healthier, the larger the population in your shelter, the less healthy it's going to be.
I left their keys on.
What's that? Is that somebody talking to us or their dog maybe?
I think one of the things that makes it so hard, like I know with what me and Beth are dealing with, is knowing exactly how ACO is supposed to respond to different situations. Like a couple weeks ago, somebody called me, or I saw the post on the page that I run, that there was a dog that appeared to be injured in a gravel lot on the side of the highway. So I got out there, somebody was leaving at the time, and somebody had called the police department, which is our town animal control. He's a member of the police department. So I went out there with the dog couldn't get up. 2 officers came out. They got on the phone with the town animal control, and he told them that unless the dog was in dire need of emergency medical services, to leave the dog. And I was like,
And that's
seriously, I said, no.
But that dog is in dire need.
Right.
right.
Yes.
And that's where law enforcement officers can also bring some of these charges. They can
Mhm.
act, even without the animal control officer. And if you have a helpful law enforcement officer to do that, more power to you. The problem is this: there is some level of prosecutorial discretion and discretion to animal control officers and police officers to take action. And there's no way under the law currently to make them do something. And that's what makes so much of this so difficult.
Mhm.
That's just what it boils down to. And then
Yeah,
you've got to
'cause-
go the political route. And,
Yeah, because as soon as the one that acts as the animal control officer told them, unless it's in dire need, to leave it, they went about their way. And I was like, well, y'all can go do whatever you want. There's no way in hell I'm leaving this
Yeah.
dog.
and
We
that's
then in
where
turn
you've
found
got-
the owners who were
if
4
you-
hours away on vacation, and we did it. But
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's where you can, like, if you have that law book with you, you can flip and go, look, you're a law enforcement, you can see 6559, like you can do this, right? And at
Yeah.
least get the animal to the shelter and starting to get some care while you're trying to look for the owner.
because a lot of our problem is we have a county animal control, which is hired as animal control. And then we have the town, who is a corporal that is also animal control. So has no desire. So his discretion is going to be everything and anything that requires him not to have to do anything. That's what we're finding.
Right.
So we're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And like I said, it's hard where there's not, okay, if you get this call, you have to respond. If you get there's so much black and white and there's so much gray that it makes it very
Yeah.
frustrating and extremely hard.
Yeah, and like I said, there is, under the law currently, there's no way to force an animal control officer to do something. It just it's just how it is. It's a crappy situation, but that's
Yes.
how it is, which is why we wanted to make sure you knew that you had certain rights to take certain actions if
Mhm.
you had to.
I've got one question, if you don't mind. It's not, if you're done with that topic,
Yep, go ahead.
there are, from my research, I'm noticing that there's a pattern to setting up regional animal advisory committees. I know Chesapeake has one. They have people that are across the spectrum: animal control, shelter managers, directors, vets, and so on, that look at, regional issues and regional opportunities. I think there's some up around Northern Virginia where they are a resource, if you will, to the Board of Supervisors and or the Sheriff's Office, or a combination of both. It addresses the issue that I think Sherry was mentioning, where you have this jurisdictional city one thing, county another thing type of thing. And these boards meet on a regular cadence, maybe quarterly, and address local issues, local challenges that are specific to, you know, where the area that they live in, to talk about, you know, the laws and maybe some things that are just specific to that community. As it relates to TNR and so on and so forth. As an organization, where are you guys with that, from setting up like advisory committees and stuff like that for throughout the state, or at least putting a blueprint together about maybe how to do that, or do you support that concept, I guess is the basic question.
So I just want to go first, Heidi. So it's an animal control advisory board is what they're normally called, and there are quite a few throughout Virginia and Maryland. Maryland has quite a few, and you know, we feel like if a locality wants to do that, absolutely, that, you know, we support that, because like I always say, these are all community issues, and the community needs to be involved. You know, some of these boards are more successful than others, depending
Absolutely.
on how it's run. But I think that's with any board. I think that's with any group of people or organization. So as far as I'm concerned, yeah, if you can do it and you can make it work, but everyone is going to be different, depending, because there are so many factors. Like, say Virginia Beach has one. Well, their shelter is under the police department.
Mhm.
And let's say Arlington had one. Well, their shelter is under the health department. So it's all different, and it's I just feel like it's up to that locality to decide, you know, what their, I guess, the hybrid would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes they're formal, sometimes they're informal, and it just depends. But I'm all for it too. And we have
Yeah.
done in the past, we have done some trainings about how to work with your local governments, because frankly, with animal law, most of it is state and then some local, and having an inroad with your local animal control, shelter, board of supervisors, or whoever, whatever your local government is. I mean, that's crucial. So, yep.
Thank you.
And sometimes it's, be careful what you wish for.
That's exactly it.
Because sometimes that I have seen cases where all that does is it forms a big ball of red tape.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And if they don't, right. If it's only really advisory and you can't really make any true change, sometimes you feel like you're just a rubber stamp.
Exactly.
You can be, yeah.
Well, so we're pushing 7 o'clock right now, and I have really enjoyed this, and hopefully my screen sharing skills didn't hinder anybody from learning anything. And as you probably know, I love talking about this stuff, and you can always reach out to me. And I know Heidi feels the same way. And, and as your community liaison with the Federation, I'm always here for suggestions, or, if you need advice. And, those who are saying that their ACOs are not responding to you, I want to get that email tomorrow. I want to hear what's going on. Share those pictures with me, share the videos. And, I don't mind stepping in. It's I don't know if I'd say I enjoy it, but it doesn't bother me too much. So, yeah.
And I thank you all very much. Very excited
Yes.
to turn out tonight. And we're glad to do this. So thank you very much for attending.
Have a wonderful
Thank you
night.
both.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi and Alice.
Thank you.
Good to see your face again, Heidi.
I know I miss you guys so much, but you guys are doing great. Thank you.
Sure, they've been keeping me busy.
I bet.